Okay, I think that's over to me. Thank you. Let me go into presenter mode. Sorry, guys, able to see the slide?
No, I can't.
Okay, let me try that again. It's always good to check. You have my screen. Now the PowerPoint. Try that one more time. And go to that. Now, can you see the slides?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, commissioners, for your time today. And I'm here to present the general fund administrative budget for San Francisco Health Service System. I'd like to recap a bit. This is the second meeting on the priorities and the budget for Health Service System. And I want to reiterate some of the sort of driving principles around this budget. First, it's given to us, directions are given to us by the mayor's budget office in terms of what the priorities are for the city and county departments. One thing to note is that there is a forecasted shortfall in terms of the overall general fund budget of $653 million for the next 2 fiscal years. The mayor is prioritizing trying to support small businesses and the economic recovery, really looking at programs with demonstrated outcomes centered around equity, implementing homelessness and mental health programs, as well as continuing to respond to the COVID emergency. A couple of things that are noted with regard to the shortfall is that there are target reductions of 7.5% across the board for all departments. Each department does have their own targets, and the targets for health service system are listed here. So we have to submit a mandatory budget that demonstrates the mandatory budget reductions by February 22nd. Of the mandatory targeted reductions for health service system is $273,012 per each of the 2 fiscal years. As you know, the fiscal budget setting is biannual, so we have to do 2 years at a time. In addition, the mayor's budget office has identified contingent reductions in case the revenues for the city get into a worse position. And so they wanted us to identify additional $91,004 for the 2 years. So that's what we were given. What we've taken, the approach that we've taken, again, we start with a zero-based budget. We make sure that we're funding initiatives in our strategic plan. We've taken in feedback from all our division managers in terms of what they are funded, what's obligated, and we built the budget based on that. So with that, slide 2, this is a little bit busy, but I'll kind of get you oriented on this. So this is a summary slide with our staffing, with our revenues, and then our expenses all laid out. And on the bottom is really the summation of how we've done relative to the mayor's budget instructions. And I'll talk about each of these components in a little bit more detail in subsequent slides. On the column headers, the first column is the base budget, which is given to us by the controller's office. It does vary from the approved budget from last year in terms of COLAs and the like that are on the line item called general fund support. So if you're wondering why is it different, that's the main reason. So this is oriented in terms of the base budget that we're given for a fiscal year. The next column over is what we're proposing to satisfy the requirements of the mayor's budget instructions. And then the column over to the right is the change. And then that's repeated for the next year as well. Okay. So all told, we were able to, we've targeted some reductions in a number of areas. We did not, hold fast to the fact that, these were the trends that we had in previous years. So we were keeping things. In fact, each division manager spent a lot of time trying to figure out the best way we can satisfy these targets. And to really just bottom line it, one of the things we were able to identify a lot of reductions. You'll see that midway from the bottom, one of the biggest programs that was implemented last year, which was the 24-hour employee assistance program, that has a run rate of about $588,000. And because of that, it was really impossible to create budget reductions everywhere else and fund that program. So I can talk a little bit about that in terms of our process a little later as we get to the last slide. But you can see, based on the proposals, we satisfy the mandatory target reduction. So once all told, our mandatory target reduction in our first fiscal year is $12,002,166. And that's lower than the mandatory reduction of $12,481,469. That's also lower than the contingent budget of $12,390,000 and $465. Going over to the right, with the proposed reductions, we do satisfy the mandatory reductions. We're actually below it, but you can see that even with those reduction targets, it's below the funding amount for the 24-hour EAP. So we'll talk a little bit more about that process a little later. Okay, so next slide, I want to talk about personnel. So for fiscal year 2021 and 2022 to 23, you'll notice that our approved budgets dropped by 4 FTEs, and that's kind of a budget quirk. We had 4 positions that were approved in the budget previously as project FTEs, and so they were assumed that they would conclude by fiscal year 22-23. So we have to find a place for them elsewhere. We do have an increase in terms of costs, in terms of mandatory salary and fringes, which amount to $35,924 in fiscal year 21-22, and then another increase in fiscal year 22-23. And that is because we're targeting one position, reclassing it to handle all of the transitions to the new health plan options. Next slide. So the next section in our proposed budget is really about the main categories, which are called non-personnel, non-materials, and supplies. The main ones here are training and travel, software licensing, contracts, and other. So in the training and travel, we actually have a little bit of an increase in fiscal year 2021-22. Part of that is some additional staff training for the EAP staff to be ready for some of the new programs that we're rolling out for mediation training for some of the supervisors in the city. Then the training budget actually goes back down in fiscal year 22-23. Okay. Software licensing, the biggest component in this is really some of the licensing for the Cortico application. That is a application that we rolled out last year, last April, for first responders to help them navigate resources for mental and physical well-being. That program is actually pretty popular, is being well used by our first responders. The annual licensing for that is $160,000. There is an additional amount in the software licensing for the Athena program for an upgrade there. That's basically a case management software for our employee assistance program. In the contracts area, I think I mentioned, we had to try to target reductions there. It is a pretty large item, and our revised budget is 2.2 million. In it includes a lot of the contracts for programs such as our Flex account, actuarial services, our 24/7 EAP program, and a number of other things. And so you'll see that there is a targeted reduction of 800,000. That's a combination of the EAP program as well as recognizing the reduction for some of the well-being programs. The well-being programs, how it's funded is that it's funded in this line item, and when departments and other stakeholders embark on a program, we will fund it through work orders. So that was drastically reduced, but it's, again, not enough. It's reduced because we know that we're going to continue to be sheltered in place for a while. It bubbles back up a little bit in the next fiscal year. So anyway, it was still a targeted reduction there. In terms of other, this is truly other. It's things like copiers, it's things like minor equipment and credit card fees. And so we actually reduced, we actually eliminated a copier on the first floor, and we reduced some of the fee calculations for use of credit cards. So then getting to materials and supplies, this is an area that we know that in the last budget renewal, there was heightened awareness of what's going on with the materials and supplies. Well, for HSS, a lot of our materials and supplies are really for a lot of the programs that we promote and produce for our stakeholders. So for example, you'll notice that there really is a reduction in the first year, that's fiscal year 21-22, and then a bump up again for fiscal year 22-23. And the reason for that is really we plan to have training for supporting supervisors and managers throughout the city. There's a program that we've co-sponsored called Leadership in Action. There's training for mediation, training for supervisors and managers throughout the city. So when you calculate the materials for, conservatively about 200 managers and supervisors, it adds up pretty quickly to the change of 23,000. So all told, those are the ones that are variable and in terms of traditional budget setting. The next item really is work orders or interdepartmental services. These are the services that are provided by other departments in the city. From year to year, there's very, very little change. In fact, they rarely change. This is, if you think about it, these work orders are a cost or an expenditure from our budget, but it's a revenue to the other departments' budgets. And so a lot of these costs are departments that support us in terms of technology, workers' comp, rent, and other services like reproduction. So you'll notice that there's no proposed change from the base budget. However, with regard to rent, we were able to negotiate a reduction in that, and that's because we're really still sheltered in place. And so a lot of the utilities and the like can be reduced, and they were able to accept that. The other area where we were able to get a reduction is in the Rec and Park department. In the past, they've provided instructors for the exercise programs and that sort of thing. And as we recognize, fiscal year 21-22 is really still shelter in place. That does go back up in fiscal year 22-23. I'm just realizing I have a typo in the header for change from, so I'll fix that in subsequent release. So as I mentioned in an earlier slide, no matter how we could slice it, no matter what we could do, we were not able to solve the problem of finding a budget that meets the mayor's budget instructions with the mandatory reductions without finding a big cut. There were programs that we support, there are staff that support those programs. And the one program that solved the budget challenge, the budget puzzle, was the leaving up the ComPsych program off the budget. Now, the purpose of, again, just to recap the mayor's instructions, is that the mayor needs to target reductions across the board. Well, part of their instructions is identify how you're going to get there. We cannot submit a budget that does not balance and does not meet the budget in terms of the target. If there is a cut, we need to identify those cuts and what services would be diminished if those cuts were to happen. And so we've had discussions with the mayor's budget office. This program, that supported this 24/7 EAP program, is a program that was launched last year at the request of the mayor's office and is being used by employees. It's one that we are going to have discussions with the mayor's budget office that in order to satisfy the instructions, this was the item that potentially would be cut. Now, we think they'll support this because the employees are using it. And I did a quick calculation in terms of the number of employees that are eligible for the program. It really comes down to about $1.19 per employee per month to support this program. So that's where we're at. This is our proposal for the general fund administrative budget. And I'm happy to go back and take questions on any of the slides.
Any questions?
Larry, Commissioner Howe, thanks for the very thorough presentation. So can you just give us a summary of all the proposed cuts again that you are offering up to the mayor's office?
So really, there are a lot of cuts inside the budgets that are not going to, we've reduced, for example, some of the well-being programs. That doesn't jump off the page here, but it's part of the contracts line item that I'm showing on the screen.
Yes.
The big proposed reduction or target is the ComPsych program. So one vendor program. This is the 24/7 EAP program. It was implemented last year in April at the beginning of the shelter in place. It is being used by employees. So, we've gotten about 2,700 calls, and so there are a lot of folks who are using it. But again, part of this process is that we need to say, how do we meet that budget? And we're going to ask for this one to be restored.
And is that, so the asking it for it to be restored, that's why the base budget for 22-23 is the same as the base for 21-22?
The base budget for
the contract.
Yes, pretty close. It's off by maybe 100,000.
Okay.
So the proposed for 21-22 is 1.4 million, and the proposed for 22-23 is 1.5 million.
No, so I see that. I guess I'm just asking about the base that you start with. It's 2.27 in both fiscal years. So that doesn't get adjusted for any proposed cuts that you'd make to the first year?
No, so the base budgets are what they have in the system for us. They're making no assumptions about reductions.
I see.
And so then they drop to the bottom. If you look way at the bottom, they said, and your target bottom line, reduction is 273,000.
Yeah.
12. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Commissioner Canning. A quick question, if I may. It seems like the largest item is the ComPsych or PsychCom EAP program.
Right.
I presume there's no way to modify the contract to reduce the overall cost, or is that an impossible venture to still provide the service but perhaps minimize the expense that's impacting the budget?
Yeah, so I think, obviously, during the contracting process, we will work with them. There's always a case to do that, but at this point where it sits, this is the current run rate. We get invoices about 49,000 a month for 41,000 employees that we support. So this is the current run rate. You know, in terms of the process, you're correct. This has to go in February. The mayor's office works with the board of supervisors and gets through the process in June. So between now and then, a lot can happen, including trying to renegotiate these contracts. But as it sits, this is where we're at.
Thank you for that. Just a brief follow-up question then, with regards to what we're doing today. The modification and the adjustments to the budget as is, will that eliminate the funding for that EAP program? And the hope then is that the mayor's office will return with the possibility of finding other funding sources. I guess that's the one unclear item in my mind right now.
Yeah, as far as explained to me by the mayor's budget office, yes and yes.
It's not, this is Abby speaking, Commissioner Canning. We had a similar dilemma last year and were successful in having this program funded. It was, brand spanking new at that time. It's got a little more of a track record and has been very well accepted by the workforce. So I do think we've constructed this in such a way that it's going to be very difficult for the mayor to not support the restoration of this. So that's kind of where we stand at the moment. We've made it very clear that this is not our idea. We're kind of forced into it because of the structure of the budget. It doesn't allow for us to put this in what I had previously negotiated with the mayor's office, that this would be a sort of a below the line expense that would not erode the core services of HSS. And so that's why we've chosen to continue in that vein. And I think you'll see shortly when we do the sustainability budget, HSS is absorbing the cost of the increase in OE support that we will require next year through our sustainability budget. So while we don't negotiate the sustainability budget with the mayor's office, that is not their prerogative. I think it's important to note that we're doing more than our fair share to support the employees, but that these EAP expenses really need to be carried by the city as a whole.
Understood. Thank you so much. I find it helpful that we've been through this before last year, and also with the proof of concept and the usage with the membership. I trust the process that will continue to be successful. So thank you for the explanation. I really appreciate it, Abby and Larry.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I would add to that is that mental health is a key priority for both the mayor and the board of supervisors. So I think that adds to the argument.
Good. Okay, are there any other comments or questions?
Yes, I have another question. So this is Commissioner Howe. So Abby and Larry, I'm familiar with the practice of putting up something that it may not be wildly popular for the mayor's office to, but do you run the risk of them trying to take the pound of flesh from some other source? And if so, where do you anticipate that might come from?
Yeah, not having been through this process before, we've looked at every option, and even if we try to cut some well-being programs, we were not able to cut enough to get below sort of the hard deck of the targeted and continued reductions. If you restore the program and you cut staff, and again, that's not what we're advocating, you still need staff to oversee the programs. So it's just near impossible to find cuts to get us there.
Yeah, and I think the short answer, it would force us into recommending layoffs, which we were explicitly instructed not to do.
Yeah.
Nor would we make that, nor would that ever be our idea. So,
I totally agree. I think that that would be the absolute last resort that
Right.
anybody would want to contemplate. Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, anything else? Otherwise, I entertain a motion.
This is Commissioner Canning. I would like to make a motion that we approve the proposed general fund budget as presented.
Have a second?
Commissioner Howe, I second.
Okay, public comment?
Thank you, Chair Breslin. We'll wait a moment while our instructions come up on the screen. Okay, public comment will be available for each item on this agenda. Each speaker will be allowed 3 minutes to comment in length unless the board or chair deems new public comment time limits during the meeting. All public comments are to be made concerning the agenda item that has been presented. As a reminder, a caller may ask questions of the policy body or individual members, but there's no obligation to answer or engage in dialogue with the caller. When I welcome you on the call, you're encouraged to state your name clearly, although you may remain anonymous. When your 3 minutes have ended, I will place you back on mute. Thank you for your comment and unmute the next caller. The dial-in streaming number is located on the screen now. Opportunities to speak during the public comment period are available via phone by dialing 415-655-0001. Again, 415-655-0001. Entering the access code 146-540-5794. Again, 146-540-5794. Then pressing pound and pound again. You will then enter the meeting as an attendee on the public comment call line. Before we begin public comment, we'll take a brief call to allow time for callers to dial in using the information that is on the screen. After the pause, callers, if you've dialed in and wish to speak on the agenda item specifically, please remember to dial *3 now to be added to the public comment queue. When the system message says your line has been unmuted, this is your time to speak. For those already on hold, please continue to wait until the system indicates you have been unmuted. When I welcome you on the call, you're encouraged to state your name clearly, although you may remain anonymous. We'll take a brief pause and wait for our moderator.
Board Secretary, we have 4 callers on the phone line. 0 callers have specifically entered the public comment queue at this time. A reminder to all callers on the line, you must dial *3 now if you want to join public comment for this specific agenda item. We will wait 5 more seconds and then close public comment for this agenda item. Thank you, Board Secretary, for passing along privileges. Board Secretary, there are still no callers in the public comment queue at this time.
Thank you, moderator. Hearing no further calls, public comment is now closed.
All right, so the motion to approve the San Francisco Health Service System proposed general fund administration budget has been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? It's unanimous in favor. Item number 4, please.
Item number 4, approve the San Francisco Health Service System fiscal year 2021, 2022, and fiscal year 2022, 2023 proposed healthcare sustainability fund budget. This is an action item.
Okay. This is back over to me. Give me a second. Set up the screen. Okay, are you all able to see the PowerPoint slide?
Yes.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is Larry Liu. I'm the CFO for HSS, and I'm here to present the Healthcare Sustainability Budget for fiscal year 21-22 and fiscal year 22-23. The materials were advanced to you, but I wanted to summarize a few slides here. So just to recap, historically, the Health Sustainability Fund is really used, is funded separately through the nominal $3 per member per month fee for those who are enrolled in a health plan through HSS. The uses of the Sustainability Fund are for obtaining and disseminating information to members about their benefits and costs, for travel and transportation, member well-being programs, some actuarial expenses, and expenses to reduce the cost of healthcare. This is a slide that I find useful. Historically, the revenues and the expenses, really the expenses on average, really average about 75 to maybe 85% of the revenues brought in. The uses of it have historically been for annual expenditures, for communicating to members during open enrollment, to fund programs to help members access their benefits and the like. The annual and one-time expenditures are really sort of the implementation program costs. And so that over the last several years, since the average expenditure has been less than the revenues, we've built up reserves or surpluses that are on the line that's called carry forward. So anything left over gets carried forward to the next year, so we can fund initiatives from year to year. So this year, again, with similar to the general fund budget, we took an approach of looking at all the programs that we have embarked on and looked at the funding and the effort that it takes to get them all done. So some of the key items that are identified that are sort of annual expenditures. One of them is the dependent eligibility verification audit. So this is to ensure that those who are enrolled actually are eligible for coverage. I think Metro Greggs has presented some material in the past where doing the eligibility verification pays off for itself. The other sort of perennial expenditure that that we have funded here is to make sure that we have well-being programs, programs that every year are focused on improving the health and well-being for all the participants. Some of the one-time expenditures that have kind of hit our budget over the last several years, including the VoIP or voice over internet system that's getting the phones from an analog system to really a computerized system that was actually sped up during the shelter in place. So pieces of that were completed. However, there's still some connectivity that still needs to be done to improve the customer experience. For example, linking some of that technology to the customer relationship management system, so that you can make sure that you're connecting the records to the people and so on. Also, some of the programs that are underway include linking PeopleSoft programming to some of the other systems that we have, such as e-benefits. There's also programs for us to bring in some thought leadership in terms of how we can really improve our process in terms of serving our members. So that might be a technology process, it might be people process, it might be training and so on. Some other uses of the one-time expenditures include performing audits, for the membership programs, which I think we've outlined in our annual audit policies. And also, the resources are used for things like the medical services RFP, which will be discussed tomorrow. And then lastly, some of the one-time expenditures include the need for doing website redesign. So for example, as options for members change, the content change, and therefore the structure of your website needs to change along with that. So it's necessary to have these occasional one-time expenditures. So I'll talk a little bit about the some of the components that go into the health services budget. As I mentioned in the general fund administrative budget proposal, there were some FTEs that are necessary to implement any of the future health plan changes. So really, in our proposal for the health sustainability fund, we're talking about adding 2 project staff that are of a higher level than some of our current project staff. And so you'll see that in the third column over, the change is that we're requesting as an additional 2 FTEs. And then in the second year, we're asking for an additional change or an addition of a half an FTE. And that's because of a timing quirk to make sure that we have that staff member in place for the following open enrollment for fiscal year 22-23. So you'll notice that the salaries and fringes look a little high, and that's because these are incremental. It's accounting for reclassification of positions as well as mandatory fringes and benefits. Okay. So this slide is a little busy, but this kind of summarizes historically the approach for setting the healthcare sustainability fund budget. In the first column, it's is the revised budget for fiscal year 2021. That's our current approved budget that was approved by this board last year. The grand total expenditures approved last year was 4.1 million. And again, that was anticipating a lot of changes. Some of those changes did not happen because of shelter in place and delays in getting some programs underway. The shaded columns, the 2 columns over to the right, you'll find, I'm trying to see if I can actually get a laser pointer on here. There you go. So the columns over to the right, were for fiscal year 21-22, we're asking for 4.3 million for the total budget, and then this reduces back down in fiscal year 22-23. The increase is about $240,000 from the prior approved budget, and a lot of that is due to the personnel that it's going to take to actually implement the changes to health plan options. There are reductions, so there are some sort of reductions in the well-being programs, recognizing again that we are in shelter in place. These are the well-being programs that sort of benefit all members. And then they kind of bubble it back up a little bit in the following year. So I'll talk a little bit more about some of the other drivers. Actually, so yeah, so really, if you look at the overall, what's driving the increase in fiscal year 21-22, it's the staffing requirements, and then that actually reduces down a bit in fiscal year 22-23. So with that, wanted to take a look back at our actuals for fiscal year 2019 and 20, our projections for 2021 and going forward. So as I mentioned in the past, the revenues received from the Healthcare Sustainability Fund and the expenditures account for about 85% of what we bring in. Our projection for fiscal year 22 to 21 We do anticipate that some of the programs that we were delayed in implementing, we're still going to complete. However, going into fiscal year 21-22, we will need some additional funds to implement the health plan changes. So with all that, that will run down our surpluses. The revenues, you can, in the past, we increased them slightly year by year. But from what we can tell, again, since the revenue is based on the number of enrollees in our health plans, that's been relatively flat over the last couple of years. So we flattened the revenue side. And so part of the future pro forma is that we may run a deficit in fiscal year 23-24. So at this moment, I ask that the board approve our budget request. I'll take any questions.
Any questions from the commissioners? Comments? Is everybody unmuted?
Commissioner Breslin, this is Commissioner Zvonsky. I have a question that I want the board members to, your committee members first.
Well, I don't see anybody asking any questions. Is that? Guess not. No.
Okay, if I might ask then, Commissioner Breslin.
Yes, go ahead.
If in fact we run a deficit, how is that handled and who picks up the difference and how is that ultimately balanced and resolved? What happens with that deficit?
We can't run a deficit.
Yeah, that's what I figured. That's why
Yeah.
I'm wondering if we hit that wall, what happens? Basically, it sounds like we're going to have to go to the mayor's office and the board of soups and talk to them and say, you know, we're an exceptional department. We don't serve the whole city. We serve the whole city by serving our employees and our members. And, you know, how much do you value?
The sustainability fund is not approved by the board of supervisors. This is totally within our control.
That's right.
And what we are projecting here is without a management intervention, we would go below the line, but we can't do that, so we won't do that. And what we have experienced year to year, as we in the last 2 years internally, we've done a 5-year look back, a 5-year forecast on this to just kind of keep that broad contextual thinking. And what we see is we're overly ambitious in planning these projects, and they don't all come to fruition. So I think so it is a management issue. It is not up to the mayor or the board of supervisors.
Okay, so we're going to have to figure it out ourselves. Thank you
Correct.
very much. Thank you.
Correct.
Appreciate that.
Are there any other comments or questions from the commissioners? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion.
This is Commissioner Howe. I move that that the Health Service Board Finance Committee approve the Healthcare Sustainability Trust Fund for fiscal years 21-22 and 22-23.
This is Chris Canning, and I second.
All right. It's been moved and seconded. Public comment, please.
Thank you, Chair Breslin. I'll wait a moment while our instructions come up on the screen. Public comment will be available for each item on this agenda. Each speaker will be allowed 3 minutes to comment in length unless the board or the chair of the board deems new public comment time during the meeting. All public comments are to be made concerning the agenda item that is been presented. As a reminder, a caller may ask questions of the policy body or individual members, but there's no obligation to answer or engage in a dialogue with the caller. When I welcome you on the call, you're encouraged to state your name clearly, although you may remain anonymous. When your 3 minutes have ended, I will place you back on mute. Thank you for your comment and unmute the next caller. The dial-in number is streaming on the screen. Opportunities to speak during the public comment period are available via phone by dialing 415-655-0001. Again, 415-655-0001. Entering the access code 146-540-5794. Once again, 146-540-5794. Then pressing pound and pound again. You will then enter the meeting as an attendee on the public comment call line. Before we begin public comment, we will take a 30-second pause to allow time for callers to dial in using the information that is on the screen. After the pause, callers, if you've dialed in and wish to speak on this agenda item specifically, please remember to dial *3 now to be added to the public comment queue. When the system message says your line has been unmuted, this is your time to speak. For those already on hold, please continue to wait until the system indicates you have been unmuted. When I welcome you on the call, we are encouraged to state your name clearly. We'll wait for our moderator.
Thank you, Secretary. A reminder to all commissioners, please ensure that you are on mute during public comment to avoid any background noise coming through. Thank you. We currently have 4 callers on the phone line. 0 callers have specifically entered the public comment queue at this time. A reminder to all callers on the line, you must dial *3 now if you want to join public comment for this specific agenda item. We will wait 5 more seconds and then close public comment for this agenda item. Board Secretary, there are still no callers in the public comment queue at this time.
Thank you, moderator. Hearing no further calls, public comment is now closed. Just checking in here now to make sure that our agenda can be reposted.
Unmuted, sorry.
And
Okay.
Chair Breslin.
All right. The motion to approve the Healthcare Sustainability Fund budget for fiscal year 21-22 and fiscal year 22-23 has been motion moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Are there any opposed? It's unanimous in favor. All right, now item number 5, please. At this time, I want to say that item number 6 on my agenda item should not be there, it was put there by mistake. And when I reviewed this agenda, I guess I missed that. So it's something that's usually on in our regular board meeting agenda. So that can be deleted from this particular agenda. At this time, we'll have item number 5. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Breslin. Agenda item number 5, general public comment, which is an opportunity for members of the public to comment on any matter within the board's jurisdiction, including anything that is not on the agenda or requesting that the board place a matter on a future agenda. This is a discussion item. Public comment will be available for each item on the agenda. Each speaker will be allowed 3 minutes to comment in length unless the board or the chair deems new public comment time limits during the meeting. All public comments are to be made concerning the agenda item that is presented. As a reminder, a caller may ask questions of the policy body or individual members, but there's no obligation to answer or engage in dialogue with the caller. When I welcome you on the call, you're encouraged to state your name clearly, although you may remain anonymous. When your 3 minutes have ended, I'll place you back on mute. Thank you for your comment and unmute the next caller. The dial-in number is on the screen. Opportunities to speak during the public comment period are available via phone by dialing 415-655-0001. Again, 415-655-0001. Entering the access code 146-540-5794. Once again, 146-540-5794. Then pressing pound and pound again. You'll then enter the meeting as an attendee on the public comment call line. Before we begin the public comment, we will take a 30-second pause to allow time for callers to dial in using the information that is on the screen. After the pause, callers, if you've dialed in and wish to speak on the agenda item specifically, please remember to dial *3 to be added to the public comment queue. When the system reads, your line has been unmuted, this is your time to speak. For those already on hold, please continue to wait until the system indicates you have been unmuted. When I welcome you on the call, you're encouraged to state your name clearly. Thank you. We'll wait for our moderator.
Board Secretary, we have 4 callers on the phone line. 0 callers have specifically entered the public comment queue at this time. A reminder to all callers on the line. You must dial *3 now if you want to join public comment for this specific agenda item. We will wait 5 more seconds and then close public comment for this agenda item. Board Secretary, there are still no callers in the public comment queue at this time.
Thank you. Hearing no further callers, public comment is now closed.
All right, that is the end of our agenda. And if there are no objections, I recommend that, I move that this meeting be adjourned. And thank you all for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Holly.
Yes, thank you.